Good morning, everybody. While people are still filtering in, I can go ahead and start my virtual introductions. And then hopefully by the time that I finish, other people will have joined. So my name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff. Welcome to the March 2021 Charlottesville Historic Resources Committee virtual meeting. We should now be live on the city's streaming channels. Before I hand things over to the HRC chair, Rachel Lloyd, who will preside over today's meeting, I'll just touch base on a few things and housekeeping tips for a virtual meeting. For members of the public who are on the call right now, who are interested in providing comment, our public comment portion is at the beginning of the meeting. In order to provide public comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already. You can do that through the city calendar on the city's website. When you join the meeting, you'll be an attendee, and then when we get to the comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and I'll unmute you. And then you can talk for the allotted period of time. I think that's all I have to say. So now I can pass things on to our chair, Rachel Lloyd. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Yes, it is good morning. All right, we can call a roll. Looks like we're still missing a few people, but we'll just see who we've got. Okay, Sally Duncan.
Here.
Phil Varner.
Here.
Jenny Keller.
Here.
Jelaine. I don't think we have Jelaine yet. Heather.
I'm here. Thank you.
Margaret O'Brien. Looks like we're missing Margaret. Ellen Wagner. I think we're missing Ellen as well. Dee Dee Smith.
Here.
All right, thank you. William Clay. I think we're missing him. And Kay Slaughter.
Here.
Thank you. So Robert, I do have a question for you. With our 2 new available slots, is the city going to advertise for those?
The city is currently advertising for those.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date that they are selecting it, but they select them quarterly. Jeff might know the exact date. I don't know if it's this coming council meeting or if it's maybe in an upcoming council meeting.
Okay. All right. And I see that Ellen joined us as well. Ellen Wagner's here. Great. Okay, good. All right. With that, I think we can move on to public comments. Are there any comments from the public?
I'll just briefly read over the public comment policy for the benefit of the public. At the beginning of each meeting, not more than 10 minutes will be allowed for the introduction of any guests and public comments. Speakers may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes and shall begin by identifying their name and address. Okay, so with that being said, if you are joined on the call right now and you'd like to provide comment, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. We have 4 guests right now and none of them are raising their hand. So I think we can move along.
Okay, all right. I think we'll be able to make this a fairly quick meeting. Do we have a move to approve the meeting notes from last month's February 12th meeting?
I'd like to make a couple of clarifications or revisions.
Okay.
Under number 5, work session 1, need to develop themes. I would like to change that to consider developing themes to get a sense. And then to continue to some language like adapt to similar what is used by NPS and DHR. Although these themes may not accurately reflect our local values at the moment, that's why we would need to adapt them. And I had a couple of other. maybe I didn't. Let's see. Oh, I'm not sure what page this is. Again, it's a comment that I made. Look at the Clio program as a tool. It would be more accurate to say, look at the Clio program as a possible tool. Or as a possible as a possible crowdsourced tool.
Can I ask a question about these notes? Is this new to have such kind of
No.
detailed comments of what we're saying? Because yeah, it feels like if
No.
it's
Jeff and I take different meeting note types, and since I wasn't attending that meeting, I just copied and pasted his in. Generally, they are a bit more paraphrased, though.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't. I was for several years, I did the notes for the county's historic preservation committee, and I found, when you say someone said, then they focus on what they said, and I don't know, I would sometimes just paraphrase it. But what I ended up doing with this was I type slow, so I found on my computer I can actually read my notes and it types for me. It's fantastic. But I just read in what I had. But it is a discussion we could have about sometimes just hitting on the key themes. We know we always can go back and look at the video, although that's unique to,
Yeah.
I don't know if that will continue once we get back to normal, but you all can decide what level of notes we want. Do we want to attribute comments to an individual, whatever you all think would work best. We can have that discussion.
Yeah.
And this is my final suggested revision on page 5 regarding Vinegar Hill Park. People do not know the boundaries of Vinegar Hill, so we should delineate them, particularly at the western end of the mall. And I'll weigh in that I think it's probably helpful to have more detailed notes from this because it was a retreat. So it might be something people would return to for more than just a record of a vote or something.
Yeah. Okay, so
if
does
you-
anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to say, if you accept those revisions, I can make them and then save them to the record, but
Okay.
with your vote.
All right, so does anyone else have any other updates or suggestions for changes to the meeting notes?
Just one. I sort of know it's something for local governments, but CLG, I just wish we would spell out things the first time they're used instead of using acronyms or initials. For not just for us, but also for anybody else that's reading them. So what is CLG?
It's a certified local government. It's a
Certified local government.
Yeah, I can
Thanks.
also make that edit.
Thank you.
In the minutes or the notes.
Okay, so with those changes, should we, are people ready to vote on the revised minutes?
I move to approve the revised minutes or the minutes as revised today.
Any seconds? Okay, seconds.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and take a roll call, I guess,
I think you can
Robert?
probably do a voice vote on this if you want.
Sure.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you.
All right. Okay. Let me just get my packet up. Okay, so the next agenda item is the public engagement plan, which is really supposed to be focused on the engagement with the descendant community for the slave auction site. But I'm not sure we have the key folks in the group right now who would be spearheading that kind of re-engagement. I think Jelaine was probably the person who was most involved with that. I don't recall right now if there are others in the attendees today who are part of that and who could speak to it.
Well, it
Looks like
seems
no.
like maybe we could at least mention some if she's heading that up, but you know, that there are some, there were certainly some people at the Liberation Day who self-identified as being part of that descendant community. But you know, then there are other groups that we could contact, you know, if we came up with some kind of idea about how we were going to proceed.
Mhm.
Groups and organizations, you know,
Right.
like, I'll just say one that I've been a participant in, and several other people here too, is the Charlottesville, you know, the history group, because there are many descendants who come to that group and share stories. So
What's the name of that organization? Is it literally the Charlottesville History Group?
Charlottesville, what am I'm forgetting
It's
something.
Central Virginia.
CVHR, Charlotte,
Central Virginia.
Central Virginia.
Central Virginia
History
History.
History researchers.
History
Central Virginia
researchers.
history researchers.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a mouthful. CV.
But also, I mean, it includes people from Monticello, for example, and also from UVA who have been working with descendant communities. So, you know, it's a good group if you're really trying to get out to a lot of different people.
And actual descendants.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
I was wondering whether this group was going to handle that. I mean, it's actually kind of a complicated thing to get appropriate public comment. And I just wonder if we really even have the kind of expertise to do that, because because the other project that we're doing that's going to need this is the Vinegar Hill Park.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little concerned about us taking on something, unless there's somebody here who's really trained in that. It's a pretty big deal.
It is. But there are a lot of groups that, what I was trying to say is there are a lot of groups that are doing that have their own special expertise, have those connections, and potentially could bring those people for whatever we decide to do, you know, to review it. I mean, I was thinking, you know, Shelley Murphy with the University of Virginia has been working on that. A lot of people, as you know, in the Central Virginia History Group, and also in the African American Genealogy Group. I mean, that's
which actually might be an even more appropriate group.
Even more appropriate, but it's just a smaller group, you know. And some of them overlap, you know.
I would just worry that we wouldn't reach. That there'd be communities we wouldn't reach because they're not involved in.
Well, hopefully Jelaine, you know, is also trying to get people through the and we can find out from her, you know, through the Jefferson.
When we talked about
the way to do it. Go ahead, Sally.
When we talked about this last spring and kind of ended, I think that was one of the top things that we had started talking about is, do we need somebody to kind of head this up? And then everything stopped.
Do you do you know, Jeff and Robert, if there have been any, I mean, does the city have a facilitator on call, you know, under contract with the city that we could?
That's something that we wanted to express today. The city does have very limited in a virtual engagement capacity right now. You know, we have the communications staff, but really the extent of what they're able to do are these virtual Zoom webinars, and they're able to staff them, but not necessarily moderate them. And we don't really have a city staff person who's capable right now of necessarily moderating a meeting like this. However, obviously, determining what will happen at the slave auction block is a big priority right now, or at least it's something that a lot of people are talking about, and I know that this committee is concerned about as well. So I was hoping that through this meeting we might decide, you know, yes, some sort of virtual, like initial virtual engagement might be nice to, or might be useful to embark on, or is it something that we should, kind of clarify and decide very deliberately to shelve until we can meet in person?
And should we be doing it? I mean, I think that's really was my question, because it's going to fall on Robert and Jeff. I mean, to organize and to, I think, unless again, somebody here knows how to do this and has those connections. I'm just a little concerned about doing it right. I mean, I really want to do it right, and then not put undue burden on our 2 staff members here.
So I'll put out 2 opinions on this. One is that I think we should set things up so that they can be conducted in person when the time is right in 6 months or a year, but that any input that we gathered now virtually, I think would be of such limited scope that it would not necessarily be representative of the kind of feedback that we really want to get from people for this. So I think we can do groundwork to set up a plan and set up guidelines around it about expressing exactly what you said, Dee Dee, of setting up a framework so that we ensure that we get the type of feedback and get input from the people who are most affected by this and have the most stake in it. But actually executing that now, I don't think is actually feasible if we want to really achieve those goals. The second thing is that we shouldn't actually be the people doing it. I think we should only be setting up that structure, and that city staff or anyone who's retained by city staff for doing this sort of public engagement should be the ones doing it.
So a couple things. One, and Robert, who was the gentleman that we met with a year ago at the Gordon Avenue Library? Phil something.
I'll have to go back and look at
Yeah,
the,
we had a really good conversation, and he is a descendant, and he had some really good points about what he would do and how he would, because we kind of said to him, what would you say, how would you say it? So there's some ideas there.
Was he a facilitator, Jeff, or is that what you're saying?
I don't want to characterize it. He just had some really interesting suggestions, and we, as I recall, kind of get to, well, who would do that? And I said, would you be comfortable? And he said, and he's like, well, yeah, I guess here's what I'd say. So take it just as a not an individual's offer, but an idea to go back and look at. This is, I think, you all need to there's only so much Robert and I can do. I'm not a meeting facilitator. We can get a room at the Jefferson School. We can find spaces, things like that. But moderating meetings and then beginning to kind of coalesce the ideas. I think some of that's really got to fall on you all as the committee work. And it is something I think that I've made the suggestion before about finding a facilitator. There's a woman, Diane Brown Townsend, Shalane. We just by accident have ended up corresponding about some things, and I didn't realize, here we have someone in 10th and Page neighborhood with her qualifications seem to fall in this. I don't know. There are people here, so, but I just want to put out there that we're gonna sort of facilitate the logistics as much as we can, but you all on the committee, it's got to be your sort of program to plan and run. But I think we've made a lot of promises about this that, in fact, Rachel and I this past week have had to deal with, or last week had to deal with some questions about it. So if we're not going to move forward, we need to explain that to council. At the same time, I think council has, an interest in making sure that what we have in mind happens. So.
And
Jenny,
Sean,
did you-
Jelaine has joined us now.
Yeah,
I
Jelaine has joined.
apologize. Jumping
That's
in from
okay.
Another meeting. Yeah, I've worked with Diane Brown Towns on another matter, actually just a few weeks ago, and agree that, you know, she's someone that has the trust of a lot of people, is, you know, in leadership in the descendant community, you know, in a kind of, you know, in their now, you know, kind of more formally established 501c3, you know, so she would be a good person, and she's an educational consultant, has, you know, done this kind of work and stuff. So I think that's a great idea, you know, and it would be nice. And I'm kind of like, things are looking more hopeful now with the vaccinations, you know, kind of starting to hold out. I got my first shot, you know, and, and, you know, and hopefully, you know, we'll be in a place, you know, maybe this summer, you know, where we could actually meet in person, you know, maybe under a, you know, kind of under a picnic canopy, you know, at the Washington Park or something, you know, still kind of outdoors, but, you know, something like that. But yeah, I think facilitation is going to be key here. And I'm not an expert in that. You know, I'm usually the one that's facilitated, you know, these things. So.
Jenny, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think this is an excellent suggestion, to use a local facilitator who has good connections and networks and is trusted. Before that idea came up, I wanted to suggest that we circle back and invite the people that met with us at the library about a year ago. I think there was a lot of energy, and just as a resident who has often been invited to a group to give some input, and then no one ever followed up with me. And then 3 years later, there was some plan approved, and I was like, I would have loved to have known that was happening. I think it's a courtesy to invite them perhaps to a year later revisit that with us, because we're going on, some of us were there and most of us were not there, to let them say what they're thinking a year later. And that could be facilitated or not facilitated, but just kind of on a human level, because it was a very good session, I think.
Would one of you explain what that was? I don't know about it.
I can do that. So we had 2 or maybe even 3 meetings that were, you know, publicly stated, of course, but they were not with our regular HRC meetings. It was kind of a subcommittee of us that met with representatives of the descendant community. And this was like in the Gordon Avenue Library, you know, to just kind of ask for input about ideas for the slave auction block, you know, and this was after, you know, February when it was stolen, you know. And we had, you know, 2 or 3 meetings like that with some representatives in which they told us to go big or go home. And then, you know, and we were kind of sketching out the kind of extended community engagements that we were going to do. One, I think, was going to be after Mother's Day, and the other, you know, or something like avoiding Easter and Mother's Day, the high holy days, you know, but, and then of course COVID shut it down. So these individuals, Eddie Harris, Myra Anderson, Calvin Jefferson, and Don Gathers are 4 names that come to mind. Yeah, gave up their time for that. And yeah, we want to make sure that we follow up. And also Diane Brown Towns, she has a nonprofit. She's an educational consultant. So she's, I mean, kind of legible budgetary wise, you know, to the city in terms, because I think it's important to pay people for their work. As Black people, we have a thing about uncompensated labor, you know, yeah, that's, you know, so I think it's important to, you know, to kind of to honor that hours of service with, you know, with some kind of compensation, you know. And so she, and again, because she is, you know, she's kind of set up already, you know, as a consultant, you know, because this is the kind of work that she does, that would be easy, I think, to, you know, to from our budget to do that. So I don't know what people think.
I absolutely think we should be compensating for someone to take this on. It's easy to do if we stay within a certain budget limit to not have to go out to a competitive process.
Right.
So if it's under $10,000,
yeah,
just from based on my experience with us doing this for council, we've looked at facilitators. So
okay, no, thanks for that. I didn't, yeah, the whole competitive bidding thing, but yeah, this isn't a, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like the BRC or something. This isn't a big, you know,
Yep.
such an involved thing, you know. And also I would hope meals that we could do, you know, people like to eat, or it's easier to, you know, kind of,
Mhm.
I think, come together around food, you know. So if that could, you know, come out of the budget. So if there's, yeah, money for facilitator and also for, you know, for, I don't know, caterer, you know, Mel's or somebody, you know, come in there and.
So
I think that's the old world, Jelaine.
What's that?
I know where you're coming from, but now we're kind of in the post-COVID world. Do we really want to reintroduce food? When I mean, just to bring it up, this isn't necessarily the venue, but since we want to do things in new
We'll
ways.
have to follow CDC, whatever the
Yeah.
CDC says, I guess, you know, maybe if, you know, come June or something, you know. and
I
if
have
it's
to say that
outdoors-
I feel a lot healthier since I'm not going to city meetings and eating city food, although I appreciate having been fed by the city. I just didn't need to eat all of that food just because it was put out in front of me.
Yeah.
well,
I
so
just
I
kind
have
of
a,
Although
envisioned
ranting,
it.
I would also say that I hope when we start to meet in person, we
Yeah.
won't do away with the virtual component, particularly on
Oh, yeah.
something like this with the
Yes.
descendants of the enslaved, because they could live all over the world now and maybe want to have an opportunity to participate. So I would hope that we would have some way that we would do broader reach out than to just the people who live here at this point in time and who are physically able and comfortable to go.
Right. Maybe it could be joint, you know, like one meeting virtual, another, you know, or seeing, you know, what, I mean, again, we'd have to see where things are at, you know, in the summer and what the CDC says, I guess.
so can I ask a question that backs us up a little bit? I mean, I wasn't with this group a year ago, but I understand why there was the outreach to the descendant community, and there was a big discussion about some kind of marking or commemorating the slave auction site. My impression is that now, with the possibility anyway of a Mellon grant, that there's that some of this community engagement and commemoration might be sort of subsumed under that project. And so I guess I'm asking, if we were going to spearhead some additional engagement,
Mhm.
what is our end goal? And has it changed from last year with the introduction of the Mellon Grant commemorative process? How, if it has changed, how does that affect what our intent is with the engagement?
Well, I would say that a year ago, there was no Mellon, you know, dream of Mellon funds even, you know, in the offing, you know, that was not, you know, all, you know, all that was there was our desire to do this, and the city's, you know, kind of, you know, commitment that this is a priority for the city. So I'm saying, you know, we were prepared to go ahead last year, you know, without, this is something that the city has said is a priority. And we can't put all our eggs in one basket. We don't know, you know, if we'll get Mellon money or if we'll get, you know, they might just fund it partially. We'll probably have to go to other funders, you know, and this sort of thing too. So I wouldn't want to kind of put this off or put, you know, but on the other hand, to your point, you know, what does it mean to engage in a process if we don't know how far ahead this can actually go, you know, with, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I take very seriously, and as I know everyone in this group does, the desire to go big or go home. And so if the intent is not to create a smaller plaque, you know, it is going to be a more robust commemorative or interpretive effort there, then I guess this, either the city's got to pay for that or we get grants and other things. So I guess it's just, I suppose we need a kind of multi-prong planning approach. Like if it's a Mellon grant, then it would work like this. And then the Mellon grant funds might pay for community engagement or descendant community engagement. Or maybe the city's going to plan, you know, pay for it and we have a different trajectory. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how all this will work together and what the goals are.
I saw it as,
I guess I think it's important for the city to pay for the community engagement because this was already a commitment made by the city. It was already something we were, you know, if COVID hadn't come along, that was the plan,
Right.
you know, and there's already budget there for it. You know, I think, what do we have, like 50 grand or something? I don't know, Jeff, you know, what's going on there in
Okay.
terms of this. So that's already there. And also, if we're engaged in that process, that allows us to go to other funders, and apply for other grants, and like, see, we're doing this process, we're following, from, we've been doing that, since 2016, BRC, this, that, and the other, and I think that shows a seriousness of intent, to other funders, again, not counting, all our eggs in one basket, too.
That makes total sense to me. Yep.
Yeah, when Joanne and I were talking last fall, there was almost, there's a, sort of the thought that maybe an assumption that a thing, a something, a monument, something will occur, be erected in or near that area. But we are also saying that, that the input from the community may very well be, we don't want this, that, or something else. So there were sort of these, like, every step had a, all right, stop and reevaluate, stop and reevaluate. And so the way I viewed this, and again, it was that meeting last, I think it was March 4th, just, really hit home. And it was like, we were kind of going, well, what about? And they're like, nothing. We're not suggesting anything. We're saying, don't come to us with ideas, come to us and see what we think. Us being the Senate group. So, so going to what Jelane's saying, I think the first step, and I think what the committee, to me, is committed to do and can do, or at least organize it and come out with a plan for it, is to go out and have these discussions. We're not proposing to construct or build or install anything. We're not even there yet, I think. So that's how I keep. So if we separate from this, we're going to have to build something, put it somewhere, and find funding for it. Don't go that far. What we've said is, well, we'll respect what they asked, and let's go and see if we can organize something where we can get some feedback from them, and then formulate an idea that then obviously would then go further up the ladder. Does that help?
Yeah, and what Jeff said there is important about the kind of readjusting according to feedback that we receive along the way, because I think our impression at first was like, oh my gosh, the plaque got stolen and this needs to happen. And we were gonna put up a new plaque. It was gonna be a better plaque and better wording, but and the descendant said, hold up, stop with that. We've seen where this goes or doesn't go. So you can either sit there and you can just sit there and be embarrassed with it, that there's nothing there, and work on something that is more robust, so we kind of, in hearing that feedback, we kind of had to adjust our goals,
We initiated a dialogue.
Clarification.
We have a responsibility to finish it or to continue it, not to finish it, but to pick it up and continue it and not leave those 5 or 6 people feeling left out of this if they should happen to read about this in a newspaper or online.
Could I get a clarification? Because I wasn't here and it's only what I read in the paper. So when you say go big or do nothing, then I gather that is in sort of the outreach, but is that also in the product, the end result? Or if you would just explain more what the conversation
exactly was. They were concerned, those that we talked with, and this is not any sort of consensus, I don't know, but people who were able to come at a certain time, which that was another problem, having this in the middle of the work week, right, in the middle of the work day. Anyway, of those that made their opinions known, they didn't want just another plaque put up because they fear, and again, this was pre-COVID. I mean, here we are now a year later, they didn't want a plaque just, kind of put up there, because they thought that then that the city would just us, would just kind of lose momentum on the project, and it would just remain a small plaque as it had for years. That was the concern.
And again, I think the gentleman's name was Phil. Let's remember, but
Philip Cobb. Yes.
Yes. And he was saying, people may say, yeah, that's fine, or that may come out of that. That temporary marker is fine, So, but they were like, at least ask us. And I know that as recently as I think it was in February, first February City Council meeting, the woman that spoke with us, another name, I can't remember.
Myra
Yes,
Anderson.
she spoke to council and was very clear about, it was almost verbatim what she had said to us a year ago. So if you wanted to go, hear that, that's on the tape. But again, it was this, we don't, something temporary tends to become permanent in this town. Don't do anything until you've had a conversation. And it was very powerfully and well said.
And on behalf of the committee, I kind of reinforced those comments after the public comment was done, just to acknowledge, like, this is what we were hearing, because we've also heard the counter to this, that people wanted us to go in another direction. And so I certainly made a point of that and appreciated her sharing those comments.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff's right.
Yeah, and she's with the Reclaimed Roots descendant group. So there's lots of different players here, different constituencies, even within, this overall umbrella of descendants, there's there.
Well, the question, to the group too, one, we know that there is and I think it's a good idea. I think, just like you said, we made that promise. I think the committee can follow through easily. We didn't promise a statue. We didn't promise a memorial. We just simply promised to do some outreach. And I think a plan to do that is something we can develop. And Robert had put some things together. The second piece of that is that the question has been, well, what are you doing right now? And I think we've said we can't do a whole lot during the current circumstances. We could, you could set something up online. I don't know. And, Robert and I and Rachel talk about, it's almost something like where people can, pin ideas, whatever, just to simply start to accumulate thoughts and ideas, but not as it being a substitute for the process. Or we tell council, this is our plan, but we're not doing it until the public health emergency is over with. Now, they can decide otherwise, but that would be what this committee is reporting back to council, just so they know where we stand. So does that help in sort of this conversation? Not necessarily resolving what the plan is today, just sort of making the determination we're going to create a plan.
Mm-hmm.
We could do something pre-normal, or we tell council we're waiting until after normal. And that's what we're doing. If they choose as the elected official to do something else, they certainly can.
Well, maybe we could do something, since hybrid is all the rage now with the school districts, and everything, but maybe the first meeting or so are like this, virtual like this, and, which kind of gives a little chance to kind of get to know one another, and the facilitator to kind of, work some things up. And then again, pending CDC recommendations, so maybe let's say we have an online meeting with this, descendants, facilitator, et cetera, in May, let's say, and it also gives a lot more time for outreach, so that there's kind of this ripple effect of people keeping reaching out. And then when CDC says it's okay, then we have a larger pool of people who are that, and then we can meet in person. But maybe it's like part of it. Maybe it's kind of a building thing, and so that we have some momentum that we can already start now, with a meeting or so, online, to at least kind of get things started and have that, with a goal toward in person.
I think it's a great approach, because we just don't know how long that ramp is going to be until people are going to be really comfortable coming together. And I think that is important to kind of build that momentum. I will just say logistically, I think the first step then is to engage the facilitator, because they're going to have to coordinate that effort. The city, these are not public meetings. And so I think we don't want them to be. Let's not complicate this, and so you're unlimited in how many meetings you can have, as long as not more than 2 of us are talking at them, and all of us can listen. But I think we need to then separate it from this full body and have this be a descendant community engagement process that we are observers in, if we so choose. So I'm just kind of thinking about logistics.
I would still like to invite the 5 or 6 people that met with us at the library, maybe to meet with us in our meeting next month, so that we've circled back and we've acknowledged and valued their contributions, and have them help us plan the next stage of bringing in the facilitator and how that should be handled.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, and maybe that's the next step. Have them come in and then, plan for a larger meeting with the facilitator maybe in May. or something.
Yeah. And then am I right in understanding that the person you identified who, Diane Brown Towson, someone like that who's a facilitator, but also could be the person who starts to gather the list of organizations and names and groups that should be invited, so she could do both of those things? Or do we take on part of that? I mean, I guess that's a question for the group.
Mhm.
I think we should be providing her with whatever thoughts on the group to engage, but welcome her input. I don't want to leave that totally, I wouldn't want to leave that totally on her. Because there's some legwork there, probably.
Yeah.
I think her
Dee
focus
Dee?
will be the facilitation piece and input on, I mean, not saying that she wouldn't weigh in on that, but.
Yeah.
And Jillian, before
Like
you
the-
got on, we were talking about the different groups that we should be reaching out to.
Yeah.
To engage.
Yeah, Dee Dee had a comment?
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate that this isn't the only issue we have that we need descendant feedback on. I would hate to have such a laborious process that we can't do anything. And I'm sort of curious to hear from Heather. At the council meeting, they turned down the Henry Martin sign because there wasn't enough community input. So who's going to do that? And I mean, again, that's actually a relatively probably small one because it's geographically confined, but Vinegar Hill Park is going to be big. It's going to be big. So anyway, just not sure how it all fits together.
We don't want people having consultation fatigue. as
Yeah,
it were.
so maybe that's another thing that we can help with, is just figuring out all the local projects or initiatives that these kind of extended communications could support and feed into. And I think what you have emphasized, Jelaine and Jeff, that there just needs to be flexibility in it, and it might build or shrink or expand, whatever, is important. But so if it's, the slave auction commemorative and interpretive thing is a possibility, Vinegar Hill Park is another possibility. Other topics?
I mean, who is going to do the community input for the Henry Martin sign? I mean, what I see happening is that it's not going to happen because
I thought it was more that we're saying that for this application to be reconsidered, that there needs to be like following more of the process that this committee outlined about, is making sure that we're hearing from community members when these honorary street name requests are going. And so I don't know that there's a formal action beyond us following back up with the applicant and saying, for this to be considered, these are the criteria that we need to follow. And I don't know if the onus is on any one of us to do that.
I was going to say, I mean, I got a call from a council member about it, and I explained we haven't been involved. The HRC was never involved in these. Not saying we refuse to be or won't be. I said, but we never have been. There is no requirement. So to make that clear, but I think that the onus should be on the applicant. It's they're making the case. They're making it's their idea. I think that they need to just like Alexander did with his survey, indicate their support for it. But that's I don't know. I hope we don't become the public outreach arm for the city of Charlottesville. I don't think.
Yeah, this is a concern, and I think we expressed this concern at the time, was that if the bar is so high that only some people, it will be very exclusionary as to who can even nominate by whether you have influence and power. And so anyway, I didn't want to go down that road necessarily. It was just that's just yet one more piece that I thought was going to either fall by the wayside or it was the only one that was rejected on that case. And I just worry that this is going to be too high. We have a different bar for different signs. But anyway, I don't want to go down that road. Sorry.
So I'd like to bring this around to ask Heather a question about the allocating money. Is that something that we should go to council to request, or should we use our HRC funds for it.
For which initiative? Just this initiative?
I mean, the immediate descendant outreach.
I think we should use the existing funds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
So,
my understanding too. I think we got 50,000.
yeah, we have 40 to 50. I can't
Yeah.
remember exactly.
But
So I
let's
mean,
not use it all up on one because we have a lot of other,
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah,
Well, and I think, and as Heather mentioned, there's a limit on the funding that we can use for a direct contractor hire. Otherwise, it has to be publicly advertised. So that, anyway, that makes a difference.
and is that amount $10,000 or was that an S?
It's $10,000.
It is
10,000.
10,000.
the the Blue Ribbon Commission, I think council allocated 10,000. They used just over half of that. So I mean, as far as just a number in your head of what it took to do that, and maybe we can.
Well, that was for food though. I mean, I think, and probably space rental. I mean, no consultants or anybody were paid for that.
And is it $10,000 per fiscal year?
It's the engagement. So if we have,
It's per engagement.
yeah, for this engagement. Mhm.
Because I was going to say, if we, if we're able to, what fiscal year ends June 30?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because if we're able to have 2 or 3 meetings before then, and then it's still necessary to have, another, in the following fiscal year, then that, but yeah.
Or
I
we
think,
just
I
have
think it's
couple
more,
different
it's more
engagements
per
and-
project because
That's what I
that's
said, the
what
engagement.
Heather talked
Yeah.
about. It doesn't
Right.
matter whether it takes 1 year, 2 years, or
Okay.
3 years.
Just
Yeah.
clarifying. Okay.
And then, if it's going to be more than that, it's an RFP process. It's not super complicated. It seems like a pretty straightforward thing that would just go out, wouldn't take a ton of time. And we still get, there's a procurement process and then, people, obviously it's competitive, but at the same time, there's ways that, it can get to the same outcome. But it is a lot easier just if you stand to that threshold.
Could I ask a question? Was the Henry Martin deferred indefinitely or was it referred back to this committee?
It was not referred back to this committee, I don't think.
So
No,
we have no further responsibility for it, right?
that's correct.
We've completed our task.
That's right. Yep.
So it's not going to happen.
And if we were ever to consider something like that again, then we would need to have the criteria in hand or discuss them before we started an evaluative process.
Well, frankly, like what the recommendations out of this committee almost reinforce council's decision on this one, because even though that criteria didn't exist before, there was just an interest in hearing from the immediate neighborhood or the family of Mr. Martin versus external, other folks weighing in without that additional support. And so that's all it's being asked. And I think that applicant can go get that. And I think council can reconsider it, but that was where we landed on that. And so I just wanted to be clear that it's not that it's not done. It's just, there needs to be some more support for the application for council to consider it.
Yeah.
And there were some feelings of that even within our own committee.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess my question, so for the community, so the engagement for the descendant community then, I mean, it sounds like our whole group is feeling like it would be the right thing to do to embark on an engagement process and that we would scope out work for a facilitator and that it would include communicating with the people who attended the meeting last year and that there would be some initial virtual contact and a larger plan that the facilitator would help us make for in-person contact as the year goes on and the COVID restrictions lift and we can gather safely, and that there's got to be some flexibility in the process, but that our group and an extended network of people in Charlottesville would help build that list of people who need to be who need outreach.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Is that a fair representation? So I guess, so Jelaine and Jeff and Robert, would you all want to work on kind of initial scoping of the of that work? and maybe identify one or two people, whoever we think we might want to reach out to. I mean, I guess we have to see if we think the work can be done under $10,000, and if it's more, a bigger effort, then it would have to go through a more formal RFP process, but we won't know that until after it's scoped.
Although I would also say that we could probably allocate that amount for the initial work now, and then do a follow-on amount that's larger once we actually have some idea of what the scope could be. I think
Definitely,
I'm more
yeah.
inclined to just allocate some money now, so that like we express that this is important and that we're moving forward with it, and we can engage with a consultant, assuming, there seems to be some agreement that Diane Brown Towns is a good candidate for that. And do some initial work to even like get the scope together of what a timeline, what a set of what a process would look like, do all that work. I certainly don't feel that I could even scope that. So I think that's why the having the consultant I said consultant, to do that work is important now, even in these very initial stages.
I'm a little uncomfortable with us having this conversation as a committee and throwing around potential budgetary figures and names of people who might do this work. I feel more comfortable leaving that to our staff and Rachel's designee.
Okay, well, we can, I do think it's helpful for us to know, first of all, what the contracting options are within the city. So, whether it's we can assign or, ask for a proposal from a facilitator, or whether we have to publicly advertise it. So that's just one useful piece of information. And I just think we have to be open at this moment to the idea that it might need to be a publicly advertised project or not. We'll figure that out. But yes, why don't I get back? I'll reach out to Jelaine later this week, and we'll glue together a group who can start talking about what the work might entail and the proper processes according to city rules and policies about about some options for making that work. Just recognizing that there are local people who may be appropriate. They may or may not have time to do it or interest to do it or anything like that. We just don't know. But
Yeah.
I do think
Because we haven't even talked to her. So
right.
It's great to have the recommendation. We shouldn't take it any farther.
Yeah.
I think that my only concern about that is it's sort of a chicken and egg problem. Like, do you have the people in the plan, or do you have the budget, and like which one comes first? Like the person might not be interested if there's no budget, but you can't figure out the budget unless you have a plan and some people.
Right.
Whereas like we kind of have control over the budget right now, and so we could allocate it, and then we know we're going to move forward with it in some way, allocate it, and then there's money for somebody who would be interested in doing the work.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure that we follow all the proper legal procedures and make sure it's all done correctly. All right. So I feel
bureaucracy is painful.
Yeah, it's okay. We're being fair. Okay, so that unless other people have other comments, I think that covers our public engagement planning portion of the agenda. So we have laid out our ideas and we have some very clear next steps. So I think that's great. Does anyone else have anything they want to add before we move on? All right. Okay, so now the next item is a month-by-month meeting schedule. And that is intended to help us track some progress on projects that have been simmering in the background through the subcommittees and other things. So this might be tricky, but I'm thinking maybe for the next 6 months, we can get a bit of a schedule so we have some accountability for these different projects. And if it's impossible at this time, let's just everybody, if people feel like the subcommittees cannot make forward progress at this time because of COVID or whatever, we can know that. But, let's say starting in April, hold on, maybe we plan something out until August.
Well, I imagine that at least for the next 2 meetings, we'll need to have ample time to discuss this engagement process for the slave auction block site. Next meeting, Jenny's idea, which I think we should absolutely do, is to invite the 4 or 5 people who we talked with last year at the library. So we'll need to have time to meet with them next month. And then the following month, we'll probably need to kind of collect what we gathered at that meeting and maybe further planning for any engagement that we might need. So I think those will be priorities for April and May.
Okay. So was that the thinking, Jenny, that the people who attended that meeting at the library would come to a general HRC meeting, or do you think that should be a separate virtual meeting that's more focused? And Jelaine, I guess I'm asking that to you as well.
I think, whatever, I don't know what the, kind of the rules are, in terms of public meetings for that. But yeah, I think it would be important to kind of reconvene those, original folks that gave of their time already last year, to kind of, yeah, I think that would be important to do in a subcommittee kind of thing, I think.
A subcommittee, okay, all
Yeah.
right, yeah.
And I'm furthermore, and I'm willing to do that and to
Yeah.
reach out to them.
Okay.
We could have, Jelaine, if it was just you and one other HRC member, we could have a meeting that we wouldn't need to use communication staff for, and we wouldn't need to publicly notice it. But
Okay.
if we have more than 2 HRC members, then it would need to be a publicly noticed meeting.
Okay.
So we could organize something smaller if
Okay.
needed.
All right.
Should we allocate honorariums for those people that we're inviting?
I'm fine with that. I mean,
Again, this is a justice issue, that it seems that, so many of the people who volunteer for these boards and, and all kinds of stuff are, folks that can, they're not taking time out from their job, that have the kind of flexibility, economic flexibility to do that. And also, it is consultation and with, members of the community that have kind of suffered the brunt of not being compensated for labor. So I think it's an important gesture some way, and, to recognize their service.
so do we have is there a vehicle for that right now, Jeff?
I have no idea. I don't. I think I can ask, but I don't know.
That would be great if you could ask, and we'll see. And
Yeah.
okay.
I know we can.
We should discuss a policy if we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
It should
Yeah.
not be run outside of policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Can we should put that on the agenda for next time, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be happy to continue to meet with this subcommittee.
Okay, great. So Jelaine and Jenny so that will be, obviously we'll have to work around the schedule of the folks who attended the meeting at the library, the 4 or 5 people, and see what their availability is, but maybe we can cross our fingers for an April meeting.
Yeah. We'll try and do that and try to plan it for a time of day that is more suitable to schedules of folks, working folks,
If people are interested in making a more public presentation and having a more public discussion, then I would be delighted for them to come to our April HRC meeting. And I think you know, if it gives, if they're interested in a more open public forum and sharing ideas to the broader public, I'd be delighted to have them. I'm sure all of us would. So maybe
Okay.
that can be part of the invitation as well.
Right.
Either coming to an HRC meeting with some discussion with the whole group, or as a separate virtual meeting.
Right.
Okay, all right. So that's on deck in one form or another for April. And we can discuss the how that affects the planning in May. But it seems like definitely in April and May, we'll need to discuss the next steps for the public facilitator and what that process will look like. Sorry, I'm just writing all this stuff down as we go. Okay. The other topic is markers. It's like the subject that never dies. I know that you all shared the latest and greatest for the markers and what state they were in. How do people feel about how that process is fitting in with some of the other investigations that we've been doing? Is this something that's really a priority to plow ahead on and get this all tidied up and ready to fabricate in 2021? I forget who's on the subcommittee, but I think it was Jelaine, and then we've lost a couple of our other people. So Elisa and Jordy, I think we're on it.
I
So
think
maybe
we voted on it. I think we voted on it at last meeting to proceed with it.
yeah,
I continue to feel a little uncomfortable with them. I feel much more comfortable if we tested them out online or in paper copies before we went ahead and had them fabricated and installed.
I like the online option.
Yeah, is it possible to make a, I don't know, kind of Google slide or something of it, you know, so that we can look at that?
I mean, if we're having engagement on almost anything, something that's going to be physically fabricated and installed in a very visible location of our community, shouldn't we test that out somehow?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
But even to reach that point where the markers, the text of the markers has reached a point where they could even be put on Google Slides or on some virtual platform to test out for engagement, they do still need some work, and we'll need some work sessions for that.
Okay. So of the folks who are on the subcommittee, do you need additional people to add in to fill in from Elisa and Jordy's spots?
Who's left on the subcommittee?
So I think Jelaine.
I think me and you, Jenny.
I think I was on it, yeah.
You know, I would be happy to just look at them. I don't think we could take on responsibility for creating any new ones.
And I'll also volunteer for that subcommittee.
Great.
But I see it mostly as a more kind of tone and editing kind of thing than anything else at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay. So is it reasonable to have a new sort of editing done by, let's say, June or July, so that the group could look at it by then?
July feels more reasonable.
July.
Is
fine.
This something that members of the subcommittee would be willing to just communicate via Google Docs and comments, or would you feel necessary? Would it be required to meet virtually?
I think if we could put them into Google Docs, that would be the most efficient way to do it, because you can do it at midnight or 5 o'clock in the morning.
All right. So Robert, is that something that you could set up, or does the subcommittee just need to set that up separately?
I think I can email and correspond with you. But if at any point you do think that the subcommittee should meet just for coordination, that's just something I need to know far in advance, because our communication staff will need to set up an additional meeting for that month.
Okay.
So, in April or in May, if you feel like you as a subcommittee would like to meet, just let me know and I can set something up.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind that when we have a document that is being worked on, if I understand everything, it is accessible. The public could ask to see it. So it's it's a good tool to use, but it's also beware of how candid.
I thought that had come up last year when somebody did ask to see it when we were in the middle of editing, and we were told that when we had it ready as if we were going to present it to the committee, then it was a public document, but before that it was not.
Yeah, that was my understanding too, Sally, and I can talk more with our communication staff about that. But I do think if there's a draft document that's being actively worked on, that's not necessarily a public document.
So would that be maybe oh, sorry, Didi, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask whether we're going to honor those that were already approved, or are we now going back to square one?
That's entirely, yeah, it's up to you all. You voted, but the committee voted in October 2019, essentially to start over. So.
And Didi, all of the signs, all of the markers, even those that were approved, were being actively worked on. So there were none at this point that had not seen revisions.
So as I understand it, there should be some sort of intermediate step where we get, probably the committee gets the text into a form that is able to be made public. And then that is made public in some way so that people can comment on it. And then we continue to revise it until the committee's satisfied with it.
Shouldn't we bring it back to the full committee?
I think I wasn't clear on saying subcommittee versus committee.
Yeah.
The subcommittee should work on it until it's in some state and we figure out either through the entire committee or that subcommittee that it is in a state to be made public. It's made public, comment, revision, and then at some point the subcommittee brings it back to the entire committee to approve.
Yeah, I think probably the process is that it put in the packet for the committee to approve, and by being in the packet, it is then accessible to those in the public who are following the agendas.
Yep. So, what we were saying is that we would aim to get it into the packet for July.
Yeah. I think I was also thinking whether having it in the packet is actually going to get the type of public comment that we would really want, or having it in some more accessible format, like making a website out of it or something like that.
Is that possible, Robert and Jeff, to have a temporary website where we can upload stuff or comment?
It potentially, but it might be it might take some time and coordination. I do know that we had a work plan to finish these markers before COVID, and some of the subcommittee's ideas for feedback weren't necessarily like a passive feedback. Instead, I think the subcommittee considered circulating drafts to the Central Virginia history researchers and maybe to the history curriculum coordinators with public schools. So I think there are alternative ways to get feedback that wouldn't just be placing it on the website or placing it on the packet.
That was my understanding, and I'm not in favor of just wide open to public comment on these.
You could.
Maybe we could be creative about it. I mean, Jelaine had her really great tours. Maybe we could, have public readings of the markers and see what people think.
I'll make you an audio tour.
And
that you could
do an audio tour,
put it out there. You could even password protect it to say want to.
The CVHR and the curriculum coordinators is, I think, a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I was going to say, as several tools available to us, and one would be, Robert and I learned easily set up a new email address, and we could post that, and that people, if they have comments, can email it to that address. So in lieu of a web page that's interactive, maybe it's simply, where people can access, and if they have comments, they can fire them to us, or maybe there's mail them to us, and that's one way to do it. And as you all said, I think that outreach to others. There was, the concept that we have at Vinegar Hill with the posters could also be done in, as sort of temporary displays in coffee shops and things like that, sort of, or in windows that people can see, again, inviting feedback on them. You could do that all over town.
Construction fencing at the building.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to do it. But I guess the question is, how do you get people to comment back to us from the public? And maybe that the easiest way is to say, mail it to us or email it to us. We set up a separate email address so we don't get deluged.
I guess, as Rachel is putting together this month-by-month plan, by July, we should have some sort of draft text ready for some sort of public review. This is just kind of reiterating an earlier question. Does the subcommittee feel that they need to meet in a private subcommittee or like a separate subcommittee meeting before then in April or May?
I'm comfortable with Google Docs unless we find broad areas of disagreement or content.
Sounds good to me too.
Another thing we had previously prepared, and I'll find it, is a bibliography for what is in the markers. So we can pull that, updated as necessary, but that was also available, or I think there was a plan for that to be available. Anybody wanted to sort of read further, we have that. So I'll get that out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, based on my experience doing interpretation and stuff at historic sites, the simpler is usually better, and it's possible for signs to have way too much data on them. So I encourage the group to streamline, not just because it makes your job easier. Sometimes it actually makes your job harder, but it definitely makes it more relatable, usually to the general public. But I think having sort of sources for people to go to if they want to dive deeper into the information is really helpful. All right. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a plan for the markers, at least through the summer, through July and onward. Tours, Dee Dee, do you have needs or updates, or is there a process that you want to follow that we can plug into a meeting schedule for the next few months?
Right, for the downtown walking tour specifically? Yeah. Well, it's just Clay and I now, so if anybody else wants to jump in, as I sent along that Excel sheet that we had just started sort of putting in lots of different sites. I think the first thing we should do is really decide how many sites there's going to be, and then be sure that they're representative of. There's lots of ways to do it, but if you want Clay and I just to work on it, or if somebody else wants to jump in and then do the same thing as the markers, is if there's a point at which we think that is organized enough that feedback is ready for that initial feedback. Here's some ideas. Happy to do that. But I would put, I don't know if we need to complicate it with the markers at this point.
Okay. Well, so then the question is, June is a slot that we have available. Do you think you might be able to have something ready for the broader committee review at that point?
Sure.
June is your month, Dee Dee. All right.
Okay, I'll talk to Clay.
Okay. All right.
What is our schedule with Vinegar Hill Park?
Yeah.
And the code building?
Yeah.
Let me, thank you. I have my list that I was, so this is one of these I don't know the answer, and I don't know if there's an easy answer. So we have a design that 2016 council okayed, but no money was allocated for it. I've been asking what we needed to do to be ready to go with the various signage and things, and looks like I have to put out an RFP for it. So in order to put out the RFP, the first question would be, is this what is this what the committee wants to continue with? If not that, what, et cetera. Then get the RFP out, and it would probably have to have some allowance in there for whatever was on the interpretive marker.
Jeff, I just had one question real quick. Is
Yep.
that the RFPs for the fabrication?
Everything, fabrication, installation,
So
and
do you already have what is going to be there, what the sign is going to be and stuff?
well, remember that the only thing that's
I wasn't here, so I don't
Right,
remember.
right.
Yeah, same
That's
for me.
the only thing that's and I know I said Clay always give me a hard time for sending stuff out, but there's one thing that's kind of requires input from you all, and that is this it's the one sign marker, whatever, imagine a one-sided sign that you all provide the content for. And that's what's been that's where the Scott French summary was sort of leading towards. The other signs, there's one currently at that, when you get off Water Street, there's a sign that says, welcome to the downtown mall. That will be changed to, welcome to Vinegar Hill Park and the downtown mall. Then there are some, I don't want to call them banners, but they're already on the mall. They say pedestrian mall, but where they would be on this section would say Vinegar Hill Park on the downtown pedestrian mall. The design for that is all part of the wayfinding design that was developed by the city years ago. So there's nothing to it. We know what they want, but it's the piece that that you all would put the text on. Yeah. But then there was some comments made over the last year or so about not even doing any of that. So so the first step is, does this committee want to do those things? And if so, okay, then I have to put out an RFP to find out the cost so that we can go back to council and say, this is what this is going to cost. Unless, it came out of your budget, but that money was not allocated from that 2016 meeting. So do you all want to move forward with it? And Robert, you have, I'll send you the thing and you can put it up on the screen. So thoughts?
Well, I do think that initially we were going to do something really modest to delineate the park, or to just say the park is here.
It is here, right?
But then, with everything it's going to take to do anything more sophisticated, including, community engagement, but to get something up, because if we wait, it's going to be years. But the code building has to be done. I'm sorry, I haven't been on the downtown mall.
It can be done. They're rolling.
September, right?
Yeah.
September. Okay.
Yeah, they're already talking about putting them all back together and the bricks and all that stuff. So things are going to move quickly.
And so the code building doesn't have any responsibility for helping to pay for part of this park.
No.
We made an admirable effort to try to get ADA.
Yeah, we
But
did.
somehow in the midst of everything, that failed. And I will always be disappointed.
Yeah, we missed our window and yeah.
So no one was assigned to do that final marker, is that right? The information that was going to come from Scott French, or were we going to ask him to do it, or I'm just curious.
Last I think we talked about there were going to be sort of 4 markers that were going to be at what were determined to be the 4 corners of, although I think it's kind of triangular, but of Vinegar Hill. and with different pieces of the theme, different themes, but Scott really never got around to doing it. So, I mean, we could, you know, I don't know if we ever even came close to having just one to start us off. We did, of course, with our posters. I mean, we could adapt those in some way. Again, just to keep it modest, because it was going to change when it got expanded.
Right.
And there were like flags down. I mean, I'm just kind of trying to conjure what the.
I'm going to send an image in a second. So,
Okay. It was pretty simple.
yes.
I mean, I remember the documentation that Laura Knott created, right? Is that that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, Robert, I just emailed it to you. If you want to
That
pull
was
that.
the initial point of departure.
Gotcha. And that's what you're thinking about, Dee Dee, for the posters and everything?
I guess I'm not really sure how the posters without the construction fence would fit in.
Oh, right.
We would need some, and I'm not really talking about making those permanent markers, but
Right.
they were a good start. I mean, it was a,
Right. Well, okay, I'm gonna slot this in for August, since I haven't
Okay.
lost the fact that we're trying to schedule. So I'll
Okay.
put this, I'm gonna put Vinegar Hill Park under August, but then the question is what work needs to get done and who's gonna do it up till that time.
right.
So Robert, are you gonna?
Consider adding some kind of engagement component
Well, that was the whole point of
as we
starting
approach this
modest.
facilitation?
Yeah, that you could put something up that was not offensive, but not, without
Not
really a lot of
definitive.
substance, but that would buy you some time to say, look, it's here. Let's recognize it's here. But, that's our springboard for community engagement about how the bigger project looks.
To me, it would be helpful to know, before we met in August, if there were people in the community who could even agree on the boundaries of Vinegar Hill.
Well-
And if you can't, if we know going into this that no one's going to agree on that, then you don't make the absolute boundaries.
No,
part
but
of
I mean, if we had an idea
Yeah.
that if there were just some people who feel strongly about what Vinegar Hill is and was, if they were somehow engaged prior to August, it would give us a springboard. A little more, I would feel more confident moving forward.
Well, that's what I was talking about before, is that this Vinegar Hill project is going to also take a lot of community engagement. It's not even necessarily the same folks. I mean, there'll be a lot of overlap.
Unless we define it in a very concise way. Because the park can't do it all, but it's a designated space. And it should be done sensitively and respectfully. But I feel strongly we should say it's not the end all be all. It's just it's marking a space, and it's perhaps a springboard to more information that perhaps is at the center. I don't know if that's there's already information at the center, but it's not for me to speak for them.
Right, and geographically, where the so-called park was businesses. It was, going up there. Then there's the whole
Right.
story of the, residential area that, and it's complicated. It is complicated. That's why we were going to start modestly.
Right.
Right. And I do feel it's important to get something out there somewhat in concert with the opening of the code building, because I just think the timing is very important.
Yeah.
I agree.
So with regards to that, are we talking about like a single temporary / prototype sign that would be in roughly the location that a permanent one would be in?
Well, there's
Or-
a drawing somewhere. Are we going to see that? I don't know if.
Yeah, just give me a sec to pull it up.
All right, so then what I'm gonna suggest is that we would need to push our discussion up. I mean, if the code building is gonna open in the fall, then August is too late. So maybe we need to scooch that back to the Vinegar Hill thing back to June, and Dee Dee, you're off the hook until August. Okay.
Bingo.
All right. All right.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so these are the placeholders.
Mhm.
And if you go back, there's a second image that's, so, well, this is fine. So the downtown mall, Vinegar Hill Park there on the far right, that would replace what's kind of there by the bus, just down from the bus booth.
The bus stop.
The bus stop thing.
On Water.
Then there's the single-sided Vinegar Hill Park kiosk. That's for you all to fill it up. And that is, if you would imagine, you've walked into the mall from Water Street and you come to that first planter, I don't know, maybe about 30, 40 feet into the mall. This would be placed there. And then at 4 locations, you would get 4 of these octopus lamps, 2 at the Water Street side and 2 down at sort of where Old Preston Avenue came in. The light poles would have these, they're metal panels that identify that area as Vinegar Hill Park. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so I mean, we could put out an RFP for the pole signs and the thing on the far right, and continue for, take care of that. Not even worry about anything interpretive, just simply to delineate the boundaries of the established park, so to speak.
That was my question. So the way you're seeing that those 2 poles and then the sign, that actually delineates where the park will be?
The park is there. So just to be clear, it is there. It is the section of the public right of way from Water Street down to the old intersection with Old Preston Avenue.
What do you mean the park is there?
It is. The city said henceforth and forever this.
Oh, okay. But I mean, someone coming into there needs to know, because it isn't going to be developed right away, right? There won't be a real park there yet.
There was this is, I think, one of those things that had great aspirations to it, but there were 2 phases. A second phase had some additional elements to it. City council okayed the first phase, which was, and Robert, do you have that second image? I can help.
Just give me a second to pull it up.
So the committee had discussed asking council, and gosh, why do I think a letter was sent? But to evaluate that second phase, but I can just say there's no funding for anything. We just kind of got some news yesterday about, everything's sort of on hold. So, but as if you wanted the city to do something far more, the HRC could send a letter to council, but that's about all. It's not the committee's decision.
All I was trying to understand is if I was a person coming onto the mall, would I know where this park area was going to be before it's even developed vis-a-vis the signs? So is the X?
These were supposed to have been installed years ago. And that's when they started building the code. And so everything just got sort of set aside until that work was done. And with the only thing you see letter B in there, that's the sign that has the text on it. The committee can work on. It was set aside. Code building was under construction, and then there was discussion of, well, why do we even have to do this? Can we do something else? So things have kind of languished at that point. Yes, there was an effort to get the contractor to do some additional stuff, but that was not going to eliminate these necessarily. But that's where we are. So I think, you know, we can move forward. I can move forward with an RFP for some of these, all of these, none of these. It's kind of up to you all.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, my 2 cents is that we should move forward with fabricating and installing the basic signs that don't require any further design
Yeah.
and get those done. That's my 2 cents.
I agree.
And you know, Jeff, is the kiosk literally a kiosk where you can change things in it? Or is it a permanent kiosk? Is the text embedded somehow? Or do you open a little window and put something in there, you know?
It's kind of whatever.
I don't know.
I think it was envisioned as, in my understanding from, you know, what I've seen from when you all had the discussions back then, was a sort of just a sign, and it had those 4 kind of layers that Scott had advised on, but it's not a lot of space, and it's not a lot of you can do on it, but that's what we have. Now you could just do a map, you could do pictures, it could be,
Right.
yeah.
Actually, it would be interesting to have something that could be a revolving thing, because we have all those cool posters, you know.
The way to do it would probably have, you know, something where panels can be,
Right.
you know, changed out.
Change.
Can you, when you investigate the fabrication and installation costs for the ones that we know are static, do you think you could investigate what would be, like, what the fabrication issues would be for something that's more flexible? Like what's involved in?
I mean, I don't know. You know, procurement is, I'm still learning an awful lot. And
I guess what I'm saying is, could you ask a fabricator, like, what's your recommended design for something that's going to have a flexible component? Can you even do that? So we don't even have to get a firm price on it or commit to it. We're just asking what the fabrication issues are.
yes and no. Here's what happened.
Remember the old kiosk that was taken down many years ago?
So what happened? Well, the wayfinding design that was developed, it then turned out that the contractor that did this, and I think this was like in 2014 or 2015, turned out then, because they had developed the design, couldn't bid on the signage. So there's a bit of hesitancy, I'm learning, for people they're like, well, yeah, I can offer you ideas, but then does that mean I can't bid on the work? So this is government, you know, I'll just put it out there. This is not the easiest thing to navigate. I wish I could pick up a phone and call, you know, what's his name? The folks over on Market Street. You know, they've always been very helpful. Open. They did give me some vague ideas when we were talking about, when Jelaine and I, you know, had thrown around ideas about that marker at number nothing. But there is hesitance to get too involved. But I will see what I can do. I think the idea of establishing, moving forward, at least with that, the information that says you've arrived at Vinegar Hill Park, would be good. And then I could probably include in that an alternative for some sort of signage that may be added. But I don't want to do anything unless you all, you know, kind of take a vote and decide that we're going to. You know, thing is, it doesn't obligate us to spend the money because we don't have the money. But
I mean, it could be that the current design that has a permanent map or something that that we could still do that and then still explore ways to make a flexible, you know, additional something. If it's just really too hard to change that at this point, because a map would be good.
Yeah, and I think to Jenny's point, it's important to know what the broader boundaries are, because we don't want people to think that was it. That was Vinegar Hill right there.
Right. I mean, shouldn't we, at this point in time, shouldn't we be asking whether doing this package is reparative or whether it causes more harm? I can't answer that.
the thing is that park was established. It is
I know that it was established. It was established by another council. I mean, I don't even know if the people who sit on council now even know that this happened. And I know that there are people in the community that are vaguely aware of it, who at times have come to meetings and weighed in about it. But I think we have to ask that question at this point in time. Is it reparative or does it do more harm? I don't know.
Well, I guess I don't know the answer to that either. I know that there was community engagement about it in the Blue Ribbon Commission process, and we did make recommendations about it based on that process. So I guess I would say it would be okay to go forward.
Shall we put it on the June agenda and we can maybe find out more information about what it's going to cost or whatever to do that first part, and then we can vote not to do it, but at least we'll have more information.
Yeah, I mean, there's an RFP that I think Cammie had started back in 2017. So I at least have a starting point. But I just didn't want to put anything out there if it was, you know, something the group was still willing to entertain.
Well, I'm interested in it, and I'm interested in getting more of the information about it because I just followed it in the newspaper. And, you know, I don't have the information. I find that chart complicated. So I almost have to go to the mall with the chart to figure out where everything is. But I'd like to see what you've got.
Yeah, if you, Robert, I'm sorry to put this on you, if you could send us through email, not only that chart, but I think there's another one of maybe that Laura did. I don't know, that was the sign chart.
She did a clean one.
Yeah.
And then it got written all over.
Mm.
I sent something out, you know, talking to the Park and Rec and Public Works about these. So I kind of did a where are things for dummies? And it's kind of, so images on it are a little more helpful. I can pull that together and we can get it out there. I know, for example, I know Kay's had difficulty with opening PDFs. I mean, so if you can't open it, let me know. But
yeah, I could usually open.
Well, I could be in favor of a graphic that showed a map, if we could have some kind of reliable community consensus on what the extent and bounds of Vinegar Hill were, maybe are. And it was memorial in intent, and it had very few words, because I think words will get us in trouble. And we wouldn't be able to have the kind of engagement and buy-in to have those words in place by the time this would be fabricated.
And you could have a map as accurate as possible, and have something like, if you disagree, here's a box. Put in what you know. I mean, you can begin to gather some information in different ways than just public meetings.
Yeah, I think it would be instructive for people to know the broad geographic extent of Vinegar Hill.
Yeah, I think a map would be really key.
I agree.
Very useful.
What's Madeline doing these days?
I'm in.
She did a lot of work on this.
I know. I've tried to, coax her into some things, and
she helped Richard on the mid-century modern presentation that's going to be on March 18th.
You're getting more out of her than I did, so that's good. I always get
people might be interested in that.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't intend for us to have a long discussion of Vinegar Hill Park. I was mostly trying to get it on the calendar, but we do have scheduled out through August, which I think is fine for now. So we've accomplished what I was hoping to accomplish for the agenda. Do other people have any hot topics that need to be addressed in the next 6 months?
Two things. And I can save it till the end of the meeting, but I wanted to make sure I asked it. Just relative to the composition of the committee. Sorry, there's our. I'll tell you what, wrap all this up and then we still have time. I'll ask my questions at the end. 2 questions.
Okay, so this will not take long. I'm just going to reiterate. So for April, May, June, July, and August. April, we're holding for either report or invitation to the descendant community. May, we'll deal with some information on the public facilitation for that. June will be the Vinegar Park. July, we'll review the Court Square markers, and August, we'll review the tour information. So that's what I have for the month-by-month meeting schedule, and I think that is wrapped up, and now we can do announcements, and Jeff, you can talk.
Okay. Let me.
Job.
All right. So the first thing I wanted to ask you all is about. This is helping me interpret our rules, and we can. So according to the committee's bylaws, the voting members of the Historic Research Committee shall be appointed by council and shall be limited to 12. And we had prior to with Rachel, I'm sorry, we had 2 people that left. So we had 11 members, and then I included Heather as a member, as a voting member. At one point in time, we had, I think we had 12 members plus Heather. So I just sort of called her city council rep and just let it be. But I thought I would just for clarification, and as far as putting appointments out, and now that we've got a couple of vacancies, I just want to make sure that as I'm reading, it says 12 members. We can have an ex officio member that is a voting member, the ex officio member be Heather. So that would mean 11 appointed by council and whoever's the city council rep. Does that sound like a right way to interpret it? So Heather is our 12th member.
She shouldn't be a voting member because she votes on council.
Well, we can.
And when I was a city council rep
Yeah.
at one time, and I couldn't vote, which made, I mean, I'm not saying so therefore, it just, if we're making decisions that are going to council, a councilor probably should vote. Am I wrong?
I would agree with you. I think it having 12 members that, are not an elected official opens up another seat for someone. But it would mean we say when we take votes that Heather can't vote, just so that we're clear.
So that means we just need to fill one more slot. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if we're in agreement, because it would mean that the recommendation to council would be to appoint 3 new members, and then letting Heather know, I can't think she would be bothered by it, that she is a member, but she's not a voting member. Is that a reasonable interpretation?
I agree with Dee Dee, and I was on the council when this group got set up, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. There are only certain groups that council become members of that they actually have a vote on, and this is not one of them.
Fantastic. That it's been hanging out there, and I brought it to Robert's attention, I think like a year ago. I'm like, oh my God, I think we got too many. And so
well, Dee Dee created the position, so she can define it.
All right, that one's fixed. Thank you. The other one is I just wanted to get from you all. I know the Penn Park situation's a little uncertain, but I get the sense that there's some mixed feelings on what extent the committee is involved in further research. And I just wanted to kind of, if I could get from you all a decision, and not a, good or bad one way or the other. I mean, I have opportunities working right now with Tom Chapman at the Historical Society, trying to figure out a way to partner with them on doing some work. I just don't know if one idea would be use a CLG grant but if I do that, can we then use city funds to partner with another organization? I have to find out about that. But I want to take it off the table if you all, if it's something you feel strongly that should be left to I guess me working on it in my other capacities.
Well, Jeff, I think one thing that's been an obstacle is, or it was for me the last time we discussed this, is what work you're imagining. And when you and I talked later, you mentioned that it might include some research on the people who are buried there. So it was fairly tightly scoped. So maybe you can talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the first step, and this was the instruction from council, we've done the things about, like, if you go out there, you can't drive a golf cart across there anymore. We know that the area of interest is so that's been delineated. It's not going to become a golf tee or something like that. But what council said is, before we start erecting anything, or the way to honor those individuals would be to hear what descendants think should be done there. And so similar to the situation at Number Nothing. So I've been talking with Tom Chapman, I've been talking with Shelley, Sam Towler's thrown some things my way. We've actually think we found a couple threads that we can connect. And it's to maybe identify, who are some possible descendant names that we can begin to sort of follow what they did at Montpelier and what they've done at the university. But the research would cost some money. Now, I don't know what that entails right now, but but I've gotten the sense from some of you all that we don't want, or you all don't want to spend any HRC funds on that end of things. And that's fine. I just want to make clear on that so that I can pursue these other avenues. But I didn't want to just do it without.
What are the other avenues? What are the other avenues?
I can certainly can seek funds from council. I can see what I can do with the CLG grants. I have some survey funds that we use. So I have
to know that.
My usual begging and borrowing, but it wouldn't involve the HRC.
And do you have an idea of how much money it is?
I've been asking sort of, I think there's so many unknowns. The idea of, look at what Shelley's had to do in the time, and you just don't know. And I've been doing some of it, on a Saturday when I'm bored and say, wow, I want to go look at this. It's, just to come up with one name was hours and hours and hours of sort of comparing things. So I don't know. But I know we could kind of initiate some things, but sorry.
Didn't we talk about whether Parks and Rec could possibly underwrite some of this effort? Or
I don't work for Parks and Rec, and you said it's
Well, we did talk a couple hours ago about possibly doubling up some work with the facilitator and research associated with the slave auction site engagement process. And we might be able to get some efficiencies there.
But that would be a different thing, a facilitator and a researcher, it seems.
Well, but Jeff is talking about contacting descendants and
Yeah, I think he's first talking about doing some of the research to come up with the name to be able to contact people. I mean, if it seems like to me, if you could come up with just sort of an initial idea, and Shelley might be able to give you that, what it would cost to just dig around for a bunch of names.
I said, Shelley and Tom Chapman and I are having that conversation and trying to come up with an idea or a budget. And maybe, I'm not, what I'm saying is that I've just gotten a sense that, even if it were, $20, the committee has sort of said, isn't this park and recs, why are, so I just, kind of asking is, I don't want to, without knowing any costs right now, even if we're free, is this something that you all want me to continue to bring back on the agenda, or it's sort of a?
I'm interested in it.
I'm not.
I mean, yeah, and I don't mean it as not.
I mean,
interested, that's not fair.
I felt strongly all along it belongs to Park and Rec, and that it is important that the extent of the human burial area be defined and be protected and honored, and that if the Historical Society and scholars and archaeologists and others want to pursue that, but I'd rather spend money on the living and on neighborhoods in the city where the information will be inform other things that are going on. I mean, I don't think that the graves are in danger any longer now that they've been identified as such, and that it's an area of continuing research. And I don't make decisions on how staff time is devoted, but I just see it as something that is not urgent, and that's my personal opinion.
And I think
I'm not sure what we're going to do with it, where other areas of research that are within the city limits that people are visiting more on a daily basis might give us a better outcome and inform more projects that are happening.
And I don't disagree. The request council had of me, so I'm following, but it doesn't have to involve you all. But I still have to respond to council. So
sure.
Well, Jeff, can't you also talk to Parks and Rec? I mean, they aren't all these little separate units. I mean, I know they are, but can't Parks and Rec consider working with you and allocating some funds toward that?
I can, sure. I said, I can talk to a lot of people, but it's not, but the question is, you all have some funds available, but we're not, but you don't, there's no,
Doesn't
only
sound
use
like we
those.
have a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, didn't we use some of our funds for the GPS or GPR?
Yes, you did contribute to that. I'll have to find out what I know Ben did not go all the way to his budget. So when we'll close that out and see what's left. But yes, roughly a third to the GPR archaeological work that was done.
So my suggestion is, let's table the cemetery idea for now, and maybe in the fall, if we have pushed some of these other projects that we've been working on through the pipeline and then feel like we've got some work accomplished there, we can talk about picking it up. Okay. Okay, so folks, anyone have any announcements?
I'm just, I just have a question for Jeff and Robert. Is there a schedule for the new Daughters of Zion marker?
I haven't heard anything from the manufacturers in a few months. As far as I know, they were starting manufacturing, so I will send them an email and check back in.
Okay, they have an annual decoration day and Memorial Day, which gives us some time, but it'd be really, really nice to have it by then. Don't mean to pressure you.
I'll check in.
Great, I appreciate it, thanks.
That's a great point. Okay, any announcements?
Ellen, are you going to announce your film?
Oh, I can, sure, yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, can you mute real quick? You're feedbacking everything.
Oh yeah, I see it. Have like yellow bar.
We have a film coming out next week on the Blue Ridge Railroad Tunnel. And it'll be available for free on YouTube starting Wednesday, March 17th. And then later in the month, it will air on VPM. So we're excited. We started filming there 8 years ago before the work was done. So it's really exciting to get it out there, and you know, big kudos to the people who worked on it for many, many years, especially in Nelson County and Waynesboro folks. So anyway,
Did you work with Kevin Dunleavy and Michael?
Kevin's part of Con War, the Irish research group. Yeah, as you know. Yeah. And so he was definitely involved. We interviewed him and several members of Con War.
Yeah, as you know, that's a group that's very interested in the Vinegar Hill history relative to so that's who has been talking to me about including that history whatever we do at Vinegar Hill. So
right. Anyway, thanks for mentioning that, Kay. I would have forgotten.
Thank you so much. That's really exciting.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited.
Anybody else have any additional announcements? You have 5 minutes. We good? All right. Well, I think we're good then. Robert and Jeff, thank you all very much. And the whole committee, thank you so much. And we've got a lot of work. And I'll get with Jelaine and Jeff in the next week or so to talk about our next steps for April's meeting.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for
Thank
getting-
everybody.
meeting.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.